Good morning, bows and bow ties. I know it's been a while since I had, I guess, I've come live, from my normal spot. I've been pretty busy, but I was watching or maybe listening to something, and they were talking about the drag queen community, I believe. I guess reading stories to children. And I briefly heard a tidbit of it and then I tuned out. So it had me thinking about so many things, right? Because it begs the question. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the Black opinionated woman, also known as a B.O.W. And some of the topics I talk about are provocative. I typically don't deep dive too much because the state of our nation right now is a hot mess. But this is weighing heavily on my heart. So, I just wanted to have a conversation. But anyway, I was thinking about the drag queens having like story time with children. And I thought it was just so strange. Now, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some people who are going to want to come for me. Just be mad. I don't care. But I think this is a conversation that should be had. So, being that I'm still tacky, I got to upload my thumbnail after this is done because I still haven't figured out why StreamYard is no longer letting me upload my thumbnail in advance. So, this is what you should have selected. Or for those of you who are catching this later, this is the thumbnail you selected to get into this video. Okay. All right. So, I took some random notes. This isn't even well organized, but I wanted to just have this conversation. I have a couple of questions and then I have a couple of notes. The first question I thought about is why is it important to push the drag queen community into children's lives? And I say this because um, now this is based off of a limited understanding. So I'm going to caveat. Let me just put this out there. These are just my opinions. They're nobody's opinions. The drag queen community, based off of what I've seen on TV, because I watched the RuPaul's drag race, it's highly sexualized. It's highly sexualized, right? So why is that important? Regardless of if you're straight, if you're not straight, I don't care. Like, why is sexual orientation or proclivities important in story time? Why is it important to be dressed up as someone or something, or what does that have to do with story time? Why was this important for young children? I don't care if you're straight or not straight, or I I don't care. It's not even relevant. It's almost like a non sequitur. It's not relevant to any sort of conversation. Yeah, I don't understand why you would need to get a bunch of drag queens together to read stories to children. Now, I have more questions and I have some other points I want to make. Now, that I just want to put that out there for a second. I want people to marinate on that because I don't understand that at all. My other question is, before I start asking some other things about identity and expression, this is what I struggle with. And I don't know if it makes me hypocritical, ignorant, stupid, or whatever. I've seen the RuPaul's Drag Race multiple times, and it's like I'm a moth to the flame. On one hand, I'm kind of offended, okay? I'm going to be honest. But I recognize the talent and artistry, but I'm still offended. I know it's not the same as blackface, but I kind of feel like, how dare people try on, I would call it performative femininity. Sorry, hiccups. How dare a group of men who, from what I've seen, who appear to be gay, try on womanhood or femininity. Now, that also begs the question because now you have to start getting into what is womanhood, and it's really tough to, I guess, put into clean words, right? But I'm sitting there like, this is kind of offensive, right? Because this is how I would say I don't know if it's the gay community or the drag community or if they're both intertwined or one and the same. I don't know. I don't know. Like, all of this is confusing. But I feel like the gay community, in some ways, insults women because much of what they're doing is this exaggerated form of perceived femininity, and it's it's like so extra to the point like that's what you think femininity is? Like extreme makeup, extreme hips, extreme boobs, extreme hair, extreme nails, extreme persona? Is that what a woman is? Like, I don't understand it. Like, I don't even understand it. But yet I'm fascinated at the artistry of it, but it's still offensive. Like, I feel like maybe I need counseling. Like, how can I watch something that is so offensive and egregiously performative? But I'm not done with my questions. I think about when now my title said trans, what did I call it? Gender expression, gender identity, trans, and I just left it at trans, right? But you got transgender, transsexual, transvestite. So I actually was looking it up. I did a brief lookup of this, and like apparently transvestite is considered offensive now. Now, if there's someone who is not happy with the fact that I'm just now finding this out, you're just going to have to forgive me. Forgiveness is for you, not for me. Because I'm not part of this community, right? So it's not that I'm going out of my way to be ignorant. I just didn't really go out of my way to seek to understand all of these definitions: transvestite, transsexual, transgender. I didn't I hear these terms thrown about, and oftentimes I'm like, are they the same? You know, my understanding is transgender is how you identify, whereas with transsexual is, I guess, someone who's actually gone through like the sex change and had hormone therapy. Sorry, I have quick notes that's written in chicken scratch. And then a transvestite is somebody who's dressed in like, I guess like if you're a man dressed in women's clothing. So then I'm like, well, doesn't that make a drag queen a transvestite? I don't know. I don't know. What I do know is I'm conflicted because all these terms are confusing. And then when you're talking to someone or not talking to someone, or if you make reference to something in the community, everyone's hands are up in the air because there's so many terms that I feel like the goalpost continues to move and terms are used interchangeably. I don't know what's right. I don't even know what's right, but I'm not done. I wanted to talk about non binary, but before I go into non binary, I want to talk about gender. I just wrote random notes all over the place. So excuse my disorganization here because this wasn't organized. This was some quick thoughts. So I wrote down gender expression, which basically how you, I guess, how you want to present to the world, right? How you, I guess, how you present what you believe is your gender to the world, how you present, whatever that means. That's gender expression. But this is the thing that confused me with the community. You have gender expression, and yet there's all this talk about how gender is made to be something that has been determined by society, and that there is no such thing as gender, right? Gender is fluid and all of this stuff. So I'm like, why is there such thing as gender expression then? If gender, if what makes a woman as far as by gender is determined by society or nothing. I'm like, then what is this? What is gender expression then? Because gender is nothing, it's everything. I don't know. This is confusing to me. But I want you to wait because I'm not done. Because some of this is shenanigans to me because I'm confused with all these definitions. Gender expression, in my opinion, has nothing to do with your sex because now we've got to define sex versus gender. So I guess to me, your identity is how you identify. Your gender expression may or may not coincide with your identity. Now, let me get this right. You can be a woman based off of your sex. Like you're born a woman, you're born female, they'll probably say female, right? The I guess the queer community, is that the collective term? I've been calling it the alphabet community. Your sex may be female. You can identify as a woman and you can express yourself as whatever, right? So they may say feminine, butch, or I don't know. There's a lot of terms out there. But I'm like, but if you can express yourself how you want, then why do you have to have this thing called gender identity? And furthermore, which confuses me, is if you're in the trans community and you say, I identify as trans, but then just identify as trans or trans woman or whatever. Like I identify as a woman. What does that have to do with you going through all the machinations, the pain, the outward expression, right? Because remember, if gender is fluid and it doesn't mean anything, it's just like there's no such thing, right? Then why do you choose to take on the most performative aspects of manhood or womanhood that society deems to be manhood or womanhood? And people would like to think or say like, oh, it doesn't matter, but the fact of the matter, it really does. And if you think about this at a worldwide, if you look worldwide, like there are assumed, maybe that's the word I want to use, assumed characteristics of a woman. So for example, this doesn't mean that this is chiseled in concrete, but when women walk, they have a certain type of walk, right? We have hips. Um, they they spread differently when you have children, etc. So women, I say generally speaking, this isn't chiseled in concrete, tend to walk differently than a man. Well, our body composition is different, right? So although the sway of a woman's hips, um, there's an idea of what that looks like. Do all women do it? No, but many, most, I don't know. I didn't go out there with a tablet and tally it up, right? That is part of, or that is assumed to be a a characteristic of how women walk. So then my question is, if gender is fluid and it doesn't mean anything, there's no such thing as this or that, you have your sex, but gender is what we assign to it, then why, if you are trans, like if you're a trans man now woman, I never know. Wait, if you're a trans woman, does that mean you're a woman who changed into a man, or does that mean you're a man that has changed into a woman? I'm not sure which one is which, but if you're a man now woman, which I believe is trans woman, or is that trans man? You're a man that changed. The man that changed into a woman. If you're a trans woman, and if gender is this fluid thing, then if it's all about how you identify, why does your identity have to now or rather why does your expression have to change with your identity, meaning you identify how you identify? Now the reason why I bring up these things is because I don't know how to process this. It's really confusing. See, as a Black woman, I can't cover my Blackness, but as someone, if you're part of the community, the queer community, as I've heard it be called. I don't even know what words are good to say. because I hear queer community, the alphabet community, the ABC community. I'm like the letters community. That's what I made up. I don't know what's offensive. I don't know what's not offensive. I gotta walk on eggshells. I'm like, I'm tired of walking on eggshells because people surely don't walk on eggshells when they're talking about Black people and making microaggressions, and especially about womanhood. I find the very fact that we have a drag community that is lauded and applauded offensive. Although I'm still fascinated at like how are they able to do the things they're doing. The fact of the matter is they're trying on these outlandish perceived performative parts of femininity. Now, I say this as I'm sitting here with my favorite lip gloss. I'm all about that NARS lip gloss. And yet, part of my presentation is not what is perceived to be overly feminine, right? My hair, I didn't do my hair. As you can see, I slept like this. My hair is getting long now. I probably should straighten it. It's getting quite long. It's not straightened. It's a hot mess. The only makeup I'm wearing is my favorite NARS lip gloss because I feel like everybody should have lip gloss. My lips feel nice and moist. I just like it. Isn't that pretty? I love this color. It's not outlandish or anything like that, right? So here I am presenting as a hot mess. It's not overly feminine. It's not masculine. I don't think it's masculine. It's I don't know what this situation is, right? But it's just confusing to me. I just find that we have this drag community that gets away with a lot. There's a whole TV show on it, and no one calls out the hypocrisy. Although, like I said, I'm fascinated with the talent and artistry, but it's still hypocrisy. So, getting back to what I was talking about with gender identity and expression, the confusion. And some of you have just joined in. I know you probably missed half of what I said earlier, but it's quite confusing because we have we have to identify ourselves by sex, and then there's gender identity, which is different from your sex, and then there's gender expression, which, like I said, is confusing. Because when you tell me that gender is just societal, what society believes, but it doesn't really exist, but it does exist and it's all fluid, then I want someone to explain to me why the trans community takes on the most performative parts of manhood and womanhood, and yet we talk about how fluid it is, that is, it's not real or whatever it is. There's no such thing as gender. So if you identify as a woman, you're a man who now identifies as a woman, then just identify as a woman. Why are you growing your hair? You have the extreme nails. I mean, their nails look better than mine. I mean, I can grow mine long, but I'm keeping mine, as you can see, cut a little bit short for, I don't know why. Well, I don't know. Can you see? They're growing back in. There's the extreme. They go to the extremes. The extreme make the extreme hair, and the lips are done, and they got better knockers than I have. I mean, like, it's the extreme. Hey, you can go around that side. I'm live, okay? I'm like, and you can't go back this way. You can't go back this way because I don't want you on camera. My daughter came down here. So I'm just like, what is that? What is that? So let's get back to the sexes. Now, I believe there's two sexes. I believe there's male and female. Now, I'm sure someone is going to jump in here and say, but what about, but what about, but what about, somebody left a comment. I'm not going to, but what about, right? You guys know where I'm going with that, right? You guys know where I'm going. They want to talk about the person who may or may not have been born with two sets of sexes or whatever. Just because there is an aberration, a deformity or whatever, doesn't preclude, or precludes not the word I want to use. Can you wait until I'm done? You can take those. There's some already over there. Take the ones over there that are on the table out of the back. Just use those. Just leave that there because this is loud. Sorry, I'm having to parent here. So look, yes, there are people who may have been born with a set of two sex organs or whatever. Just stay over there. Um, my thing is that doesn't mean that there aren't two sexes. Okay. If if someone was born conjoined at the hips or whatever, it doesn't mean that that's normal, right? A human person does not typically become born with a person attached to them, right? And if you have to point out the exceptions and all you're doing is proving to me what's true or the norm, there are two sexes. So when people start talking about all this other stuff, I'm like, look, there's male and female. There are male and females. Okay. Um, I do believe expression is a choice. Sex is not. So I think the thing that people kill me with is they want to talk about gender expression. I don't feel like I have to codify my expression. Now, granted, I'm coming from a privileged place of identifying as a woman. I don't put cis in front of it because I don't have to. I'm not doing it. I'm not. You're just going to be mad. For those of you who are mad, you're allowed to be mad. Be all the way mad. What I'm not going to do is now start putting all of these qualifiers in front of my name because you want to be like, I feel like if you're the one who's struggling with your identity, this is a you thing. This is you who is troubled. If you are struggling with your identity and your expression, don't require me to put qualifiers in front of my name or whatever. And most don't. I'm not going to do it. I do think expression is a choice. I don't go out of my way to say I am expressing myself as a so and so woman. I just live my life. I just am. But like I said, I recognize that I'm coming from a place of privilege. Um, like I said, people will mention that I wrote down a deformity doesn't negate the reality. Okay, so what I was going with that, I think I alluded to this, was you can be born with two sexual organs or whatever, but it doesn't negate reality. It just means that you were like in nature and everything. You got plants, you got animals, etc. There's always a I hate to call it a defect, but it is what it is, like a deformity. But it doesn't negate the reality. So I wrote down, I don't think expression is supposed to be confused with trans, but I feel like it's becoming confusing with the trans community. I don't know now, like people are using gender identity and expression interchangeably. So I never know what it is that people are trying to tell me. I just kind of have that dumb, dumb look on my face, like I don't know what's going on. But I think the biggest thing is because you have such a small group of people who are struggling in their own identity and expression are now going through all this identification and putting pronouns in front. Now you've got, I guess, those who don't identify with a sex, or maybe they don't identify with a gender. I don't know, which is confusing because when I hear words like non binary, so I'm like, if you're non-binary, so I wrote down, if you're non-binary, can you believe in a transgender? Right? I mean, like, think about this. Non-binary is like, my understanding is you don't believe in it. There's you don't identify with the gender, so then there shouldn't be anybody who's non-binary who identifies as trans. You don't believe in gender. You don't believe in it, right? So you don't believe in trans then. You don't believe in changing genders. Everybody's just one big gender. I don't know. Like, what is going on? This is the kind of stuff that I'm sitting here like, if you're non-binary, then that means you don't believe in trans, right? You can't believe in a transgender if you believe you are non-binary. You don't believe in gender. You don't identify with a gender. So you don't identify with trans either, right? Somebody let me know. This is the reason why I say, like, the community is so weird to me because I don't understand the definitions. If you identify as non-binary, then you don't believe in that you're part of a sex or that there is a sex. I'm going to rephrase that, gender, which means you don't believe in transing, right? You can't change genders because there's just one gender or no gender. I don't know. So you're not changing genders. Someone let me know. You don't identify with the gender. So clearly you don't identify with the trans community, right? Because you don't believe there is a gender or that you identify with a gender. You don't believe there's a such thing, which goes back to if you're non-binary. I just feel like that what is up with this gender expression thing? There's no gender, right? You don't identify with a gender, so you shouldn't even be concerned about gender expression because you're non-binary. This is the kind of stuff that drives me crazy with the community because it's not clear. Where else did I want to put down? I wrote down notes all over the place. This is the thing I want to say too. And this is for everybody who's part of the community. Now, you're allowed to be mad at what I'm going to say. It's not meant to make you feel good. Stop calling everybody a phobe. Just because people don't agree or understand doesn't mean that they're a transphobe or a lesbian phobe, a gay phobe, a queer phobe, or all the phobes. Because I'm going to be honest, I'm not really scared of y'all. I don't understand all of these terms and definitions. I don't identify with all that. I'm doing this. Can you give me a few more minutes? Thank you, sir. I don't identify with the community. I'm not part of the community, right? But just because I'm not part of the community does not mean I'm a transphobe or a gay phobe or a lesbian phobe or a binary, non-binary phobe or whatever it is. I'm almost done. Okay. So for me, I feel like in the community that those who are in the queer community, you need to stop. Stop calling everybody a phobe because they don't agree or they don't understand. I'm not saying that there aren't some who aren't phobes because I can really care less. Let me tell you something. I can work with anybody in the community as long as it's not harming me. I really just don't care. Do you? I can shop. I can live next to or whatever it is. Like that part, I don't care that much. I really just don't. But I don't have to agree with everything either. And that has to be okay. You can't police how my opinions and my thoughts. And as soon as somebody says something you don't like, you want to call everybody a phobe. You need to cut it out. Cut it out. And I'm almost done. This gender expression thing, I don't know. I guess it's confusing me. Hey, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. I just need a couple of minutes. The gender expression thing, I don't know if it needs to be called gender expression since I think much of the community likes to separate gender and sex and all that good stuff, right? And a lot of times people are like, well, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that, I'm non-binary, I don't believe in all these genders and this that, and the other. So then why do you care about gender expression? It doesn't matter. So I don't even know if it should even be part of the language at this point. Much of this is confusing. And then when you try to read up on it or listen to people, and I hear terms that are used interchangeably, and it doesn't lend to any sort of clarity. I'm actually quite confused. I think I'm more confused. I think much of what's going on right now, which I don't think is necessarily tied to the queer community, I just think it's tied to the sign of the times, is much of what's happening right now, I think is based on postmodernism. And postmodernism, and I've said this in other videos, it has gotten away from anything communal or anything like that. It's more based off individualism. It's a me mentality. So right now we've got a group of individuals who are in this me phase. My identity, I, buck the masses and stuff like that. I get it. A lot of it has to deal with youth. I'm not saying that there aren't people who are older who don't engage in that type of thing. But what I'm saying is I think much of what's happening is a me mentality right now. People are hurting. People are looking for answers. People don't understand government. People don't understand the social policies and that type of thing. I think much of what's going on is rooted in postmodernism. So instead of people caring about the community and wanting to be part of something, actually, people want to be separated from the community. They want to be individuals. And hence, we have all these terms now about like how I identify. I identify as this and I express myself as that. And I don't even identify as being part of a gender, which I'm like, give me a break. So, look, I'll respect everybody's opinions in their spaces. I don't have to agree. I don't have to agree. You don't have to like it. And you're going to have to be okay with it. Like, I have to be okay with you saying things like, I'm non binary. I don't have to agree. But what I will say is this, just because we don't agree doesn't mean I can't respect you as a human, as a person, your space, all that good stuff. And if I've done something wrong, just let me know. If I've said something out of pocket, let me know. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree, but I am trying to understand what's going on because a lot of this is confusing. It's all over the place. And every time I turn around, there's a new term. And I'm like, so what is it now? What can I say or not say? It's to the point that everyone's walking on eggshells because of a group of people. It's a small group of people that seem to have a stranglehold on what's going on. Excuse me, stop it. And let me just say this. I'm going to circle back to this and I'm going to let it go. I don't think there should be a place where you're sitting here and you're trying to get a whole drag community to come and read stories to children. The drag community is highly sexualized, and that should have no place in story time for children. Period. So people don't have to like it, but I said what I said. So look, let me get off of this because my family's looking at me sideways. They're trying to get in this kitchen. I got my husband and two boys looking at me sideways. Let me put my banner up. Um, let me see. These are just my opinions. Hey, look, everybody needs to just subscribe. All the way subscribe. Hit that like button. Go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and I'm almost done. Go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and send it to your mom and your aunties and your sisters and everybody else. You need to leave a comment. When you leave a comment, it lets the algorithm know that you like me and that I'm perfect in every way and I could do no wrong. I'm amazing. And that's pretty much it. Watch all of my videos, every single one of them. All right. My husband wants to turn on the water. Go ahead. I'm done. Let me get out of here and let me find my outro. I haven't used this in a while. And leave a comment. Don't be disrespectful because I'm all about that blocking and deleting life when I get around to it because I don't always catch it timely.